This is how I mastered each track. I decided to master them all together because I think it would be easier um, to master them all together. So then they'd all, at the end of the mastering process, they'd all sort of sound the same and sound like they all belong together. That was kind of my thinking behind it. What I started with is on automation. That's not automation. I meant to click that one. I would just sort of fade in the tracks. What I'd do is, depending on which track I was bouncing, I would do the fades to that track, and then I'd do that for each one when I bounced it. But I'd fade it in, and then I'd also uh, do a fade out at the end, because obviously they're all different lengths. But like this one here is fade out for Am I Wrong? But when I do the others, I'd put the fade out in the correct place. For when I'm going to bounce it. But they've all got the same plugins on. They all have the same EQ, um, same linear EQ. Just sort of it's sort of removing some of that low end frequency that's sort of unnecessary if there is any build ups. And then often there's a this is sort of where the vocal will sit. So there's just a slight bump there to sort of let the vocal just sort of push out a bit. And I've also increased the bass a little bit as well. And then I've also done something. I've increased the highs just a little bit, just to allow the highs to push through. Because I think the tracks were a bit bass heavy, so I've allowed some of the higher frequencies to come through. Um, but and then if you go onto the definition 5 for the EQ on that, it's similar, but I reduced some of the mids here and only put a little dip in just around 5k there, um, just because sometimes it can cause like the cymbals just sort of be a bit bright, so that sort of reduces the brightness, but I can still give the really high frequencies a little bit of a boost as well. And then again, just where the vocal sits at around 2k, just to give that some boost. And even if I tried EQ, it's sort of similar to the Am I Wrong one, except there's just a bit of a reduction in the bass. Um, and But the same is, relatively sort of the same idea. Sort of the same as that, except yeah, Am I Wrong? I just increased the bass just a little bit. But whereas even if I tried, I just reduced it as there was a bit too much bass. And then for Haunted, it's sort of the same kind of thing, just a bit of reduction on the bass, and then the boost around 2k, and then just increasing the highs just a little bit, and they've all been rolled off here. Then what I did is that I added an exciter to all of them. What it does is it's basically the the lower the frequency goes, sort of the more bass you have, and the more kind of body to the track, and the higher you go, the more sort of higher frequencies you have. Um, but what I did is this track was set to, I can't remember what it was set to now. Um, but it's set to, I believe it was about 460. Um, so there's a reasonable amount of body and bass to the track, but it's still got a good amount of high end as well. For Definition of Art, sort of a similar kind of thing. Um, Even if I tried is also the same. I believe is Haunted the same? No, Haunted has slightly less body and a bit more high end. I thought because there was already quite a lot of bass and body to the track, it didn't need as much um, as the other tracks. So there's um, slightly less body and a bit more of the higher frequencies for Haunted. Then I added a compressor It's just sort of a bit of light compression just to sort of lift and boost the overall track. Um, and that's sort of basically the same for all the tracks. But then I've added a direction mixer. This sort of affects how thin or wide the track is, and often they start at one. So all the tracks I've just made slightly wider, just to just to reach that just slightly further out spread across the tracks. And then I added an adaptive limiter, and what I do is I would use the adaptive limiter and the loudness meter, and I'd play the track, and the aim is to get it at around 10, and I'd reset and play the track, and basically I'd increase the gain on here until it was sort of around 10 on the loudness meter, and that's when I knew that the track was about loud enough. And I did that for each track. They were all sort of require about the same 5 gain, I believe. Am I wrong? Was were they all 5? I can't remember. I think one might have not been 5. Um, no, they were all 5. Now I just realised I didn't rename that track. I'll do that now. That should be Haunted. Not even if I tried. That was my bad. Um, but yeah, and so basically that's sort of what I do to make it loud enough. And I've got a correlation meter on MRR. I put them on all of them, just to check. But it was just to see that the phase was fine, and I did that on all the tracks and checked, and they were all the phase and everything was perfectly fine throughout. And so that's sort of the mastering process that I went through for this, and yeah, that's kind of what I did.